Hello, good morning. Today, our guest is Professor David Comerford, and we're going to be talking about meritocracy and the inheritance of advantage. And this is the name of a paper that was recently published by David Comerford. So, David, what is a meritocracy?
Hello, Lipton. Yeah, a meritocracy in our world, in the way we've imagined in this paper, is a world in which firms can uh, sense that which is valuable to them, so they can see the sort of productivity of the potential workers that they are selecting from, and they choose to reward those workers uh, towards their productivity. This might not be everybody's definition of meritocracy, but we think it's aligned with the original meaning of the concept of meritocracy, which was invented by a sociologist in the 1950s called Michael Young. He imagined meritocracy as a state of the world which was kind of dystopian, so it wasn't a particularly happy state of the world, and this was because the talented were able to extract all the benefits and keep them to themselves. So we think our conceptualization of meritocracy is consistent with this view, in the sense that if you're talented, firms will see that and will pay you for your talents. So a meritocracy is a world in which wages are very closely related to the intrinsic ability of workers. Other people might imagine a different definition of meritocracy, which is more about outcomes, and they would conceptualize meritocracy as about fairness. So, and their sense of what a meritocracy might be is to do with whether they view the world as fair. We think that this is not, because a lottery, for example, would be perfectly fair in terms of you're not getting advantages from your parents, for example. But we think that that's not a good definition of meritocracy, because a meritocracy has to be kind of related to your talents. So all we mean by a meritocracy is that firms will be able to sense how talented you are, and will pay you as in accordance with that.
David, are meritocracies really meritocratic? Because in your article, you indicated that firms often select people using a criteria like social capital or their perceived status. And research actually shows that employers are like to employ people whose cultures are similar to their own.
We don't really have that concept in our article. What we have is just about, we're trying to contrast the effects of parental background with intrinsic, uh, with your talent after you've been educated, say. So all we are trying to distinguish, uh, and to sort of cut this sort of story short, is that we think that they end up looking quite similar, but they are sort of fundamentally different. Is the difference between your parental background, which we measure just as the income of your parents, versus your own talents. So social capital, sort of class, ethnicity, everything else may be important, but in our model, in the way we've approached the problem, we're only thinking about it in terms of your parents' income. So to the extent that that's a proxy for all these other things, then yes, potentially. What if the question is, are meritocracies meritocratic because like advantages can be inherited? And that's we try to limit the extent of that as much as possible. So compared to what evidence shows about genetic inheritance in terms of uh, abilities and things like intelligence and anything we can measure across generations. It seems like genes explain maybe up to about 50% of that. We have nothing of that. We have your kind of intrinsic talents are unrelated to your parents, except to the extent that they decide to invest in you. So where they send you to school, essentially. So we kind of are underplaying the advantages can be inherited, and yet we find that advantages are going to be closely related to your parents because of the amount that they choose to invest in you rationally. So meritocracies are meritocratic in the sense that in a meritocracy, merit is rewarded, but that says nothing about whether advantages are inherited. This is kind of the point of our paper. Advantages will be inherited. So even though meritocracies are meritocratic, they will still exhibit a great degree of uh, relationship between one generation and the next in terms of economic output.
David, do the parenting styles of the elite differ from working class people? How do elites invest in their children?
Uh, I, sociologically, I don't really know. We just suppose that parents do care about economic outcomes for their children and that there are possibilities for investment. So clearly, we know there are ways in which parents can invest in their children, special schools. They can just provide them with a rich environment as they grow up, send them for music lessons and take them to trips to all sorts of places. The it, the extent to which this investment happens and matters is something we're assuming, but it doesn't seem to be inconsistent with what we believe around the world and what we see around the world. So, so yeah, I have no sort of definitive uh, answer to this. It's an assumption about our modelling that parents can influence the human capital of their children, and they will make these investments in response to the economic environment that their children are going to face to some extent that is sort of sensible. They're choosing the amount that they want to invest in their children, but we don't believe that this is inconsistent with the real world in any sense.
David, there is an academic called Richard Reeves who some years ago he wrote a book arguing that upper middle class Americans were driving income inequality because they were aggressively ambitious about the prospects of their children. And I think that this could be a thesis. This is a thesis that you can test along with your co-authors at some point because upper middle class people they will pay coaches to get their children the right internships, the right jobs, and into the right schools. So by the time they're 16, their CV is just awesome compared to the average person.
Exactly. So this story is kind of consistent with what we're imagining, but we're taking it kind of as given. We're not testing this in any sense. We're just saying, suppose there exists the possibilities for parents to invest in their children, and there's not any difference between rich parents and poor parents. They all want to invest in the possibilities for their children, but obviously the rich parents have more possibilities to do so because they have more resources. So we take this as an assumption and ask what are the consequences for societies.
David, what's the link between income inequality and social mobility?
Uh, In our paper, we're specifically looking at a type of social mobility called intergenerational mobility. So that is defined as the correlation between the income of one generation and the following generation. So if your parents are in the top 1% of income in their generation, what's the chances of you being in the top 1% in your generation? Or if your parents are in the bottom 20%, what's the chances of you being in the bottom 20%? This is known as the intergenerational income correlation coefficient, and it measures the extent to what you might call social mobility because it's the degree to which your background seems to affect outcomes for you. And across the world, there was a paper in 2012, that was by Miles Korak, charted this number across the world, or across certain economies in the world, the current degree of inequality, and found that there was a negative relationship between mobility or intergenerational income mobility and income inequality. Labelled this negative relationship as the Great Gatsby curve. So what it basically says is that societies in which there's a lot of income inequality at a point in time also seem to have less mobility in terms of the chances of a poor person having children who are wealthy.
David, are you finished?
Sorry, yes,
Okay.
carry on.
So there is a statement in your article, and I would love for you to shed some light on it for our audience, please. This is one of our key results. Societies that reward human capital handsomely, and where as a consequence the children of the rich do not enjoy advantages once human capital is accounted for, are nonetheless bound to show larger inequalities and lower social mobility. What do you mean?
Well, what we mean there is that, so suppose firms pay no attention to your background. So they do not reward you for your accent in terms of that being a signifier of social class. But nevertheless, in a society that has a lot of income inequality, so class really matters. The poor are very different from the rich in terms of income. What this means is that the children of the well-off will have had a lot of resources invested in their education. So they are very likely to have a high level of human capital, which means that this meritocratic society will reward them for their high level of human capital. So they are likely to both be rich themselves, so that a high degree of correlation between their parents' generation and their own level of income. And there's also going to be a large degree of income inequality as a result as well, because firms reward, the firms know how productive you're going to be, and therefore they can reward you for that productivity that you have. What you're going to have is the society is meritocratic in the sense that it rewards productivity intrinsic to you. It's not rewarding you for your parental income. It's not conditional on social class. But it turns out because you have had a lot of resources invested in you, that it's going to look like social class is being rewarded anyway. So you're going to see a very similar look at society, irrespective of whether it rewards a social class or whether it rewards intrinsic productivity. So a meritocratic society can look very similar to a non-meritocratic society, what might differ are the returns to education.
Would you describe America as a meritocratic society?
Well, that's the kind of numerical exercise we did in the paper. We looked at several countries, uh, and we only used 3 bits of data about each of these countries. We looked at their income inequality, we looked at their intergenerational income coefficients, which is this measure of social mobility or intergenerational mobility, and we looked at the share of national income that was spent on education. And with these 3 items of data, we sort of categorised them into meritocratic or a what we call aristocratic, or paying attention to advantages. And what we found was that America was kind of in the middle in terms of the rewards it paid out to parental background, but it was actually at the top for the rewards that it paid out to the intrinsic productivities of people in the labour market. So in that sense, according to our definition, it was the most meritocratic society in our data set. So what you could say about the data was, even though America was very unequal, and even though America had a very low degree of social mobility, this was because it was paying people according to the signals out there, intrinsic productivity, and this, because it had these accurate signals on intrinsic productivity, it was able to sustain a high dispersion in terms of the payments that went to the rich and to the poor, because they got payments to talent and not to talent. And also this spilled over into the next generation, because these talented people who received a lot of money were able to then invest a lot in their children, and this meant that intergenerational mobility was low and inequality persisted across generations. So the high degree of inequality and the low degree of mobility was consistent in America's case with a meritocratic society. It was also consistent in the other sort of country we chose to highlight in this data set was Italy. And in Italy, it looked like it was consistent more with a high degree of sort of rewards to your rewards to family background rather than to intrinsic productivity. And the way in which we separated groups of countries was basically in terms of the expenditure on education. So this was deemed to be meritocratic because it had high expenditure on education. So the only reason it would have high expenditure on education is because the returns to education were very high, and this is explained by firms rewarding the productivity signal that they were receiving rather than the family background signal.
David, rich people, do they have access to better information? And if this is the case, is the argument for meritocracy undermined? Because you cited a study in your article noting that rich people have better access to information, and as such, they're suited to invest in their children to a greater extent than the poor.
And in our article, it turned out that the rich and the poor both invested the same percentage in their children. It's just that the rich had more resources to invest. So I'm not sure there was any intrinsic difference in the behaviour of the rich and poor. It's just that maybe what you say is access to information, that's perhaps just one thing that resources buy you. So everybody would want, part of the process of investing in your children is working out where to send them, what opportunities to try and open the doors to for them. more resources you have, the more you can make good choices in terms of these things, because it costs money to acquire the information to get internships, say, or to cost money to uh, find out how to access opportunities in across a whole range of types of opportunities. So, so yes, the rich may have access to better information, but that's by virtue of being rich, because the acquisition of information is costly.
David, are you measuring relative or absolute mobility? Because intergenerational mobility can be low, yet people still record higher incomes than their parents and grandparents.
Yes, so it's relative. It's about the number that we use, which we don't measure. We take it from other sources. We use it as an input to our model. Uh, that number is to do with the correlation of income rank across generations. If you're the wealthiest person in your country at a point in time, then your rank is number one. We want to know what the correlation between parental rank is and the children's rank. So a high correlation means that the rank order of children in the next generation will be highly correlated with the rank order of the parents in the previous generation.
David, in your article, when you're working on the mathematics, you note better information on background results in a lower elasticity of income to the ability of individuals. This might look surprising given that inequality is larger. Expound for us, please. Yes, so that's under the chapter result 6. Yes, it's under result 6. So I have your paper right in front of me.
Yeah, I will. I've got the paper here as well, so I will
Yeah.
remind myself of
Yeah, result 6, the fourth paragraph.
so is that section 6.2
Yeah,
in the
result
top?
6, yes, the fourth paragraph, the one that starts with notice also that the effects on the human capital signal is the opposite.
Notice also that the effect of the human capital signal so what that says is that if you have if firms have got more information on parental income, so sort of real world, an analogy to that might be there is more uh, distinctive accents that denote social class in a country. So this might be more true in the UK than it is in the US, where accents are maybe more informative about social class. And what this is saying, so that's like better information on background for firms can sense social class. What that means is that that's going to result in a lower elasticity of income to the ability of individuals. So that means your ability, the change in ability across individuals is going to lead to less change in income for those individuals. So that just says kind of what you would expect. Maybe if firms have got access to two types of information about you, information about your ability and information about your background. If the information on background is better, then they'll use it, and they'll use the information on ability less.
How do grandparents affect the human capital of your grandchildren? And you discuss this in the second paragraph, well, the paragraph below paragraph 6.
So there is a difference in terms of a yes. So if you think that what matters for your children is is you. So if firms are going to reward children based on the social position of the parents, then you don't really have any incentive to invest in your children's education. The firms are already going to reward them based on what they can see about you. So again, if you think about social class, if firms were going to reward children of the rich simply being children of the rich, then there's no real incentive to invest in education because that doesn't change what the outcomes for these children are. The firms just rewarded based on the position of the parents.
Yeah, so I get your point clearly. You said that the grandparents will have an incentive to invest in the human capital of your grandchildren because they can change the background of your grandchildren. So if you're
Exactly.
if you don't do well
Exactly.
and your children don't do well because of your background, you're motivated to invest in that grandchild so that he can have a better background.
Yes. So I think we're trying to sort of distinguish between the worlds in which farmers reward the ability of the individual relative to the world in which firms reward the social class of the individual. And if the firms reward the ability of the individual, then the parents have an incentive to invest for their children and implicitly for their grandchildren. If the firms reward the social class, the parents' incentive to invest is only because they care about their grandchildren, because investing in the human capital of their children affects the income that the children get, which affects the social class that the children then impart onto their grandchildren. So it's only a second order effect in terms of the incentive model. I think this is in terms of the real world interpretation. That's possibly a slightly arcane point to focus on, but it comes through. It's just in both worlds, parents have got an incentive to invest in education. It's just the incentive to invest in education is actually via the grandchildren for that world in which it's just social class that matters.
And David, I like this other point that's equally fascinating. You argue that the children of the rich, being on average more productive than the children of the poor, benefit from the increase in the accuracy of information on merit. Obviously, rich people have access to more opportunities. So because they're more productive as a consequence of these opportunities, information on variabilities will reward them more.
Yes. So by information here, we just mean that the information that's available to firms when they are offering wages. So if we make the information that firms have more accurate, then obviously the talented people will then get a higher wage because the firms are more certain that they are talented. So this widens inequality. So if you've got a distribution of skills in the economy, but information is low, then you're going to have approximately the same, exactly the same distribution of skills in the economy, but information is accurate, then you get a much wider distribution of uh, wages because firms are not going to pay those people that they can accurately identify as low skilled. They would instead pay more to the people that they can now accurately identify as high skilled.
It's similar to paying high income people more. So if you're coming from a lucrative job and you're asked to state your income and your income is above 100,000, to attract your labor, the employer will pay you more. So people from low wage jobs usually earn less compared to their peers from high wage jobs. Yeah. Yes, in
Exactly.
America,
So it's
yeah.
just about it's about if firms want to pay you what you're adding to the value of the firm, and per, say you work in a large team and the firm can't identify your actual contribution, then they might pay everybody in that large team the same. If the firm is able to identify exactly what value you add to the firm, then you're more likely to get a wage that is more close.
So interesting interview, David Comerford. Thanks for coming on, and we'll continue to talk about your research and share it with others. Bye, David.
Thank you very much.
All
Bye bye.
right. Great interview. Okay.
Thank you.